Hello, I'm David Ellenstein, Artistic Director at North Coast Repertory Theatre. Thank you for joining us today for Theater Conversations. If you enjoy watching these, please click like, subscribe, and share. It's free to do, and it helps us get more visibility for these videos. Thank you. Hello, and thanks for joining us. It's my pleasure today to be talking to my dear old friend and wonderful actor, John Herzog. Hi, John.
David Ellenstein? I think I heard of you.
Yeah, I somehow got stuck in your computer here.
Well, we've got to get you out.
Yeah. So you and I don't go back very far.
No, not very far. Only 45 years.
Only 45 years.
Yeah.
Well, how old was I then? I was about 38 when we met.
I'm not talking about how you looked.
Okay. So the North Coast Rep audience knows you because you've done a bunch of plays here.
Yep.
And I'm going to list some off, and I'm probably going to forget some, so you're going to have to help me.
Okay.
I think the first one was Leading Ladies.
Yeah,
Is that right?
right?
The
Yeah,
Ken Ludwig play.
Right.
And then there was Wit.
Yeah.
That might have been second. I don't know.
I think it
an early
was.
one. And now I'm going to get them out of order. You were in Way Down River. You were in Ghosts. You were in, I know I'm forgetting a bunch of them. You were in The Illusion.
Yeah. The one with Over the Tavern sequel, whatever that was called.
Oh, King of the Moon.
King of the Moon, right.
The Moon. And then the two co-productions at Miracosta, you were both in those, the Shakespeares.
Right.
You were in The Tempest.
And the Henry IV.
Playing Stefano. And you were in Henry IV Part 1 playing Worcester.
Yeah.
Right. Did I leave anything out?
I don't know, maybe. That's as many as I can remember.
Well, anyway, that's a good number. So any of our folks that saw those plays will remember you fondly from those. But you and I go back a long time. But before we talk about that a little bit, how did you end up becoming an actor? Why and what were your influences? And how did you get into? I mean, I believe you were born and grew up in L.A.
I was.
But how did it happen? How did it happen that you went into showbiz?
Well, showbiz came a little later. But the bug bit before I actually got into the business at all. I was in the Cub Scouts, like a lot of kids, in Toluca Lake, Toluca Lake Grammar School. And Cub Scouts are organized. They have dens and packs, and it gets bigger as you go up. Well, the dens are about 6 to 8 people, I guess, 6 to 8 young boys. And our erstwhile den mother, Billy Hunter's mother, I can't remember her name, but Billy Hunter's mother decided that we were going to do this skit for the next pack meeting. And she was going to cast it. It was going to be a skit about a typical den meeting, what goes on in den meetings. And I was a painfully shy little 8-year-old boy at that particular time. And she started asking people who wanted to play this part, and the hands would go up and say, oh, me. And I'm sitting there, like suffering, not knowing what to do. But I finally caught on that, oh, you had to raise your hand. So she came to the last character. She said, who wants to play the den mother? I do. What? And Billy Hunter's mother was a bit of a sadist. Come to the day that we were going to go to the meeting and do our little skit, I went down to her house and she had a full woman's dress and costume laid out for me with pumps, with high-heeled pumps, the whole deal. And when I say she was a sadist, I'm not exaggerating. She painted my toes. Anyway, we get to the meeting. And I'm standing backstage, my knees knocking together, holding my little script. I was going to go, I had to read it because we didn't know how to memorize it, or not all of it anyway. And I'm praying to God that he will strike me dead so that I don't have to go out and embarrass myself. But lo and behold, I heard my cue and I stepped on, and to uproarious laughter from all the little 8-year-old boys, seeing their friend dressed as a woman with the lipstick and the whole deal. And something clicked. I thought, oh, and I went and I started reading my little script and everything, and they'd laugh some more and laugh some more. But there was power in that. There was something that was very liberating for me in that. And I got bit by the bug at that point. I went, oh, I think I want to do more of this. I didn't know, I couldn't fantasize about a professional life at that point. But
Right.
something stirred inside of me. And it stayed with me for 60 years, 70 years almost.
And so then how did you pursue it next? I mean,
Well,
did you do it in high school?
there wasn't very many opportunities for me. I mean, my parents had nothing to do with show business. They wouldn't have known how to help me if they wanted to. And through school, Walter Reed Junior High School, there was a class from a teacher, and she taught. It was a senior class you could choose to do. Not a senior, but a ninth grade class. And so I was in that class with Heather McRae, of all people. And then I chose to go to Hollywood High School. I could have gone to either North Hollywood or Hollywood, but I heard that there was this fantastic drama teacher at Hollywood High School named John Ingle. And so I chose to go there because I could choose. And that really is where it started. We read plays, we did scene work, we did The Music Man with a full costume and set of the Bus and Truck Professional Company. We did Brigadoon, did The Crucible at high school, did The Tempest at high school. So that's where it started. And there were other young actors. Barbara Hershey was at Hollywood High when I was there, and a couple of other people. And so I was easing into the milieu at that point, you know. As a matter of fact, I had my first professional job as an actor while I was a senior at Hollywood High. I got this television job on a daytime show called Day in Court, which was scripted. It wasn't like the shows today that are all improvised and reality shows, they call them reality shows. So that was kind of how it all got started. I went to City College after that, and one thing led to another.
Right. And then early in your life, you ended up getting cast in a pretty iconic play that was part of your life for a while. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I was lucky. A lot of people work long and hard in the non-union ranks to get to a point where they can get their equity card. I had been at the summer of '69. I was at Oregon Shakespeare Festival doing the season up there, and I had just gotten back to LA, and about 3 days after that, there was an audition for this musical called Hair. And I wasn't going to go to it, but I was sleeping on somebody's couch, and the person said, "What are you talking about? You go to every audition you can. Don't even judge it. You just go, you do it." Well, I'd never sung rock and roll before. I went out and I grabbed a piece of sheet music from Three Dog Night, Spinning Wheel, I think is what the song was, if you remember that.
Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
That was Blood, Sweat, and Tears?
Yeah. Spinning Wheel
Okay.
was.
Blood, Sweat, and Tears. So I went to the audition the next day, still trying to remember all of the lyrics, and was so terrified that I kept going to the equity monitor and having him move my name down the list as I would move up. And I wound up being one of the last auditioners that afternoon. It's after 8 hours of auditioning. And so I didn't have much confidence, obviously, about singing rock and roll and getting into this thing. But I got up on stage and I sang my little song, and it went okay. And the stage manager who was running the audition, the production stage manager, says, "Wow, you've done Shakespeare. Can you do some for me?" So I did. I can't remember exactly what I did something from Tennessee Williams. I did a piece from Camino Real that I could remember, and something else is lost to the fog of time. And by golly, I got into Hair because I knew Shakespeare. So that was great. I mean,
And then how long were you in Hair?
At 20.
How long were you in Hair?
2 years, about 2 years. Longest length of employment in the theater I've ever had, actually. Never. Although I was in a Broadway tour of Crimes of the Heart. It didn't go on as long as that. So yeah, that's how I got into it, and it was a great ride. It was the greatest party I ever went to there.
That lasted 2 years.
Lasted 2 years. Yeah, yeah. We had a good time.
I
And
bet you did.
it was more than a musical. It was, as you mentioned, it was iconic of the period of the time. We were at the vanguard of the whole, at the obvious vanguard of the whole Vietnam
Protest.
era and protest era.
Right.
And so that was interesting.
And didn't you ended up playing a bunch of different parts over the 2 years, including going on as the lead?
I kind of owned. I was sort of a utility infielder for a while in LA. I pretty much owned The Young Recruit and Margaret Mead and General Grant, and some of the bit parts that you stand out from the chorus and you do a number or two, you know, as a character. So I pretty much owned that, and they closed the LA show, and they moved about half of us to New York because they had gone through a purge, which happened occasionally in the shows. There were 33 shows, sit-down companies playing around the world at the same moment.
Wow.
At one point, at the peak of it, which only lasted a few months before they started closing, but it was enormous. And there were like 12 companies in the United States and all the major cities all at the same time. It was a big, 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 big deal.
Yeah.
And being in the LA company was great because everybody wanted to hang out with us and wanted us to come to the parties. I went to umpteen Hollywood parties and got tired of that pretty quick. And yeah, it was a great experience.
So you and I got to know each other because you took acting classes with my father.
After Hair, I was kind of at loose ends and involved in my personal life a great deal. And I had heard of your father through some friends that I knew in the theater of LA. Victoria Thompson was one. And so I knew who he was, and I would pick up Variety every so often and look through it. And there was always this little box, wasn't very big, said Robert Ellenstein, acting teacher. So I knew who he was. And one night, I finally got up the courage to call him. And I did, and it was like, oh, great, we'll meet tomorrow at the Hamburger Hamlet. He was so welcoming, and he drew me in immediately. And we met and we talked about things that we wanted and experiences and so forth. And he said, well, I want you to come down and meet David Alexander, who was his partner. This was when they were on Cahuenga.
Yeah.
And I met him, and I started that very same night that I came down, did my Lord Byron speech from Camino Real. And that started a great influence in my life. Your father continued to open up doors for me in my thinking about acting and so forth, and the theater and the possibilities. And I'll always be very grateful to him for lending himself to me that openly and that embracing my abilities and my chances to go forward.
So you talk about he opened up your thinking about acting, which continued, you know, into the rest of your career, where you've done lots and lots and lots of stuff. Where did it take you to, and where are you at now as far as you're thinking about acting and you're thinking about the theater and its place in the world and its importance in the world, or if you feel that way anymore? I don't know.
That's a lot of question. Let me start.
Let
me start with what he did for me. I went to LA City College and got my basic theater training there. It's a good 2-year program, very much physically oriented. I wouldn't say Del Sarte, but touches of it. How you stand when you're playing a certain kind of a character, as what the strengths are, how you make turns on stage, that kind of technical, very minutiae. And of course, not knowing any better, not knowing any different, when they sent us off with the encouragement that they did, that you had received the finest theater education possible, you kind of think you kind of believe that because you haven't got anything else to compare it to. But obviously, I was feeling that that wasn't enough. And I had been unemployed after Hair for quite a while. It was very hard for me to get work. We weren't exactly embraced by the regular business. It was we were kind of considered non-actors because of the looseness of that show. So I thought, you know, I've got to do something. I got to get back on track, and this is how I'm going to do it. And he started working with me, and this is basically for the first year I was in his class. He disassembled all those erroneous concepts about acting and got me to stop going to performance right away and start to think. And I have on my website the Shakespeare quote, "There's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And words without thoughts never to heaven go." You got to have the thinking going on. He cajoled, he helped me pursue, he encouraged me to develop that part of the craft. And I don't know, I maybe would have done it, found somebody else at some point, I don't know. But yeah, I'll always be grateful to him for that. I think it broadened my ability to tackle all kinds of things.
Right. So he was a catalyst for that way of looking at stuff. But where did it take you? Where, you know, so he's now way in the past, he's long gone. And what do you see now? How do you think about it now?
Well, it's not diminished in any way, the techniques and the things that he tried to teach me. I'm 73 years old, so
No.
the curtain is,
No,
yes,
you're
the
not.
curtain is
No.
the curtain is the curtain. Yeah. The curtain is, you know, starting to shake a little bit. It's going to come down someday. So I probably don't have as broad a view at this point in terms of, well, I certainly don't have this broad a view at this point in terms of what I think I can do. I had a lot of ambition at one time. It increased my, to answer your question, I'm vamping into like organize my thought. He taught me that I could expect more for myself than merely being a member of an industry that doesn't treat its inhabitants too well a lot, and climbing pardon me, climbing the slippery slopes of show business, or climbing the rejection mountain isn't all there is to it. There's a real, you know, he encouraged me to think of myself as an artist.
So why is it worth it? Why do you think it's worth it? Why was it worth it for you then, and why do you still think it's worth it?
Well, certainly it's got to do with the audience. It's got to be who we shared with, and how that ripples out from what we do into the communities all around us. And the great thing about theater, as opposed to film, is wonderful too, but the great thing about theater is its living history. I mean, you got the costumes of the time, the period, all the context that these plays, wonderful plays, were written in, can become alive right in front of your face. And the mores and kinds of biases and predicaments that people face. It's like a library for the world, and it's there for, as far as what I know, is the English-speaking theater, but there's also the French theater, there's also the Spanish theater. There's so many wonderful ways of incorporating these plays into our thinking and our lives, and it shows us how we arrived maybe where we are now.
Right.
So we have some way of looking forward, some way to guide ourselves. So yeah.
Yeah, we've been filming our last couple plays. You know, obviously we can't gather as audience right now, and as much as we're doing this because we need to do it now, I've been just so struck by the absence of the audience, and so much of what we do is the live element happening and the connection that happens between an audience and an artist as the play is going on. Have you had experiences that like come to mind as I say that, where you go, it lifted and it was that connection?
Oh, sure.
That live connection?
Oh, sure.
Anything come to mind?
Lovely moments. Well, let me think about that. But I was going to say the audience is what buoys us. It's like the ocean we float on, that we can swim in, and that we can. And when they're with you, man, there's nothing better. And it propels you. It takes you to another dimension when you know you've got them. You know they're understanding exactly who you're playing and what you're saying and how this is all working for the plot of the play.
It even can happen to a Cub Scout.
It can happen to a Cub Scout who hears some laughter and goes, "Oh boy,
they're with me. We're here together, and they like me, and I like them."
Yeah.
And
well, that's a lot of the psychology of actors, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
we need
a
to
good
be
thing.
like.
I mean, in this world we're living in now, people liking each other a little better is probably pretty important.
Boy, wouldn't it be nice?
Yeah.
Yeah. We've lost our way with that, but let's not go there.
So what do you see? Do you see the theater in the future diminished? Do you just see it different? Do you see it hanging on? How do you see it?
Well, I think
theater.
there's going to be a transitional period for sure, but I have no doubt that somehow live performance in some form or another, even if it's over digital but live in the moment, because there is nothing better. It makes me think of all the things your father did in the early days of television, where they shot all those great shows live. I mean, and mistakes were made, and people got away. There's nothing as stimulating and as revealing as doing it live in front of the audience. I've got a few film things that I did, but not very many.
I wanted to go back. One of the things I remember you doing was a play called Man with Bags in Hollywood by Eugene Ionesco. I guess it was in the 80s?
It was 1978 or 9.
Oh, okay.
So almost in the 80s. Yeah.
You've told me a story related to that production. You want to share that?
Sure. It's a fun story. I was sitting in your family living room when Dean Stockwell called you.
Which you did often.
Which I did often. I was the ancillary Ellenstein.
That's it.
Now your family took me in. We're great friends. So I'm sitting there, and your father gets a call from Dean Stockwell, the one and only. He's looking for an actor for a play he's doing, and your father turns and looks at me. He says, "He's sitting right here." I got on the phone, made an appointment, went in. I don't even remember if I auditioned, but I had a meeting with him, and I was in the show, Man with Bags, never before done in the United States in a full production. It had a reading at Pennsylvania University, I think. But 78 characters, total theater of the absurd. 17 actors. I did 7 characters. And somewhere along the line, Dean found out that Ionesco was going to be in San Francisco at a symposium or something, and he got in touch with his agent and invited him to come see the show, and he was thrilled to come down. Somebody was doing this enormous play that he wrote. And we did the show, and we were invited to the lobby afterwards to meet him. And we met the most diminutive, shy, painfully shy, literally clinging to the walls. He could barely look you in the face, didn't speak a word of English. He spoke French and Czech, I guess, whatever his, or Romanian, Romanian, I think it was. And his wife, who was also of short stature, spoke French and some broken English. So they would talk, and then she would go to different actors and say things to them. And she kept saying, "Oh, my husband is so thrilled that you're doing this play and so happy, and you're all so wonderful and wonderful." And it went around and around for about 20 minutes, and it was starting to dissipate, and people were starting to go away. And she said, My husband has one more thing to say to you. And besides the fact that he loved your performance and everything, he says, he'd like you to know it's not a comedy, it's a tragedy. Talk about missing the mark.
This was after you all played it pretty much as a comedy, right?
Oh, yes. Well,
Broadly.
Dean's idea of being a director was, yeah, more.
Right.
More.
And I remember Russ Tamblyn was in it. And
Russ Tamblyn was in it, which was a great privilege to work with these guys. They were
I remember it was fun. It was fun. So do you have any specific high point memories of the shows you've done at North Coast? Anything that stands out above the others and you go, that was really good, I really enjoyed that, or that was special for a different reason?
Well, a couple of them for sure.
Yeah.
First was Ghosts,
yeah,
which was a challenge for me, and I was pleased to take on that challenge. And I grew, I think, a lot in that part and in that show. I'd never done Ibsen before or since, actually. And it was quite a wonderful experience. I was very happy to do it. And the other that I can think of right away was Way Down River, which you mentioned earlier. One of the most satisfying theatrical plays I've ever been in. You know, I mean that in the broad sense of the word, theatrical. It was just satisfying, totally satisfying to be in that.
I agree.
And Richard was terrific in it, and everybody else.
Yeah. Everybody was. Yeah. It's up there on in my top 5. I'd say my being here for 18 years. Wow. It's in the top 5 for me for sure.
18 years, a drop in the bucket.
That's it, a drop in the bucket. And I just want to say the other one I think of for you is Sebastian in Tempest.
Oh.
Yeah, you were Sebastian. That's, and Richard Baird with Caliban and Jason Maddie.
You mean Stefano in Tempest.
Stefano, sorry, not Sebastian. Stefano.
Well, you remember I was scheduled to play Antonio.
Right, and I switched you.
And you called and you said, I lost my Stefano. Which one do you want to do? And I said, Stefano.
Right. Yeah, and then it was you and Richard Baird as Caliban and Jason Maddie as Trinculo, and the three of you were so good. I mean, those scenes were, I don't know that I've ever seen those scenes done better than the three of you. You guys were really good in it.
Well, Richard and I clicked like that. It was just like, boom. And that happens rarely, where two actors, there's just, competition goes away. There's none of that. We just knew how to hit the ball back and forth.
Right.
We kept it in the air the whole time.
Right. Yeah. You guys were really good. Well, John, thanks for doing this and sharing a bit with the audience at North Coast Rep, because they've seen you on stage over the years, but now they know a little bit more about you, and I appreciate doing it. And I will see you very, very soon.
Yeah. Thank you, David. I appreciate you asking me to do this. It's fun.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for doing it. And I'll see you in a few days.
See you.